Before we go into questions, I'd just like to say I thank this panel for the wisdom and also the reflections. And it's very obvious to me that all of us who went through the strike, it left such a deep commitment in terms of how we led our lives after the strike. And with that trajectory, I think Dr. Tascoe had some very good questions to ask you today, so give us some feedback. Because we're hoping, well, I'm not going to answer the question for you, but Dr. Tascoe, would you like to ask one of your questions? I thought that was pretty revealing, especially the first one.
The first question is, and we want you to rush to the mic and fight for the mic. We don't want to try to answer your questions for you, please. How does the College of Ethnic Studies meet your career needs? Whether they are your personal growth needs or your need to be healed? Does it meet your need for knowledge expansion? Does it meet your need for career preparedness and readiness? Or does it simply meet your needs to achieve a college degree? We invite you to please come to the mic and share with us your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, we fought for it, so what's it doing for you now?
Raise your hand if you want to answer.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Hello. My name is Triana Jones, and for me, my minor is Africana Studies. My parents were born in Oakland, and they grew up and graduated during the 70s, so they experienced reading Malcolm X in school and being around the Black Panthers at that time. Me, on the other hand, we moved to Castro Valley. So I grew up K through 12, or 5th grade on, in a predominantly white and Asian, but predominantly white community and school system. So I did not get to learn about myself in school, and I was not surrounded by people that looked like me. So ethnic studies and the Africana Studies department to me meant me learning about myself. Yes, it's later than I wanted to. I would have preferred to learn that earlier on growing up in school and at home. I learned some things, but learning that in college allowed me to learn more. And I still have a long way to go, but it gave me some more of what I needed in terms of knowing about my history and where I come from. But I'm a long way from knowing enough and still working on it. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Betty Paredes. I'm a graduate student here at State. I also went here for undergrad, so I'm both a Latinx major and a psychology major, so I double majored. And actually Latinx studies helped me find my way into psychology. It's a very interdisciplinary major, so like you don't just focus on like history, but you also focus on the psychology of it, or the art, right, the musical. But I was mostly founded on education and psychology and how our system determined our intelligence based on standardized testing, right? You're not seen as intelligent if you don't do well on a test or anything like that. So I was very curious about that and how society determined how intelligent we were, right? Which is based on a white man's perspective. But yeah, so one thing I was talking to Al Rojas about actually that forever stayed in my heart was the revolution starts in the family, right? So I grew up Catholic. I grew up always having to trying to fit in with either being Latina or like being American, and I couldn't really figure out which one I was more. And also I moved around the Bay a lot, so I didn't fit in anywhere. And so Latinx studies kind of helped me helped me process my feeling. Also, it's a room for you to vent, right? So I don't know if any of you guys take ethnic studies courses, but it's just a space for you to like talk about your identity, your issues, and I just felt really welcome. And so yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know about that.
My name is Andrew Volley. I'm a second year in the master's program in the College of Ethnic Studies. And to answer your question, Ms. Tascoe, I think it's done. It's done. a plethora of things. For me, in my own experience, since I was 12 years old, ethnic studies has been pivotal in my life, where I've had multiple mentors in my life that reflected many of the communities that the strikers represented. And it allows me to understand, growing up as a Pacific Islander, we led next to the Latino community and the Black community in the highest dropout rates in San Francisco Unified School District. So a lot of the parallels in terms of my community struggle fell in line with the Latin community as well as the Black communities. So what that told me was the issues that go on in my community aren't just my own community's problems. There are common problems that exist in all of our communities, and the way we actually navigate those issues is by leaning on our brothers and sisters within these communities. So as an advocate for Pacific Islander communities, more specifically Samoan communities, like I've grown to advocate for my community by learning from other communities like yours. And I just want to take this time to say, I stand here with so much gratitude to each and every one of y'all, to all you strikers over here. I'm humbled. I'm really humbled by what y'all fought for, and have so much, so much gratitude and appreciation for you. And that's what I'm leading with in terms of how I work with my community, is understanding that our struggle aren't our own struggle. It's a collective struggle, and that's what you all have been telling us throughout this whole day. And I just want to say thank you.
We have any questions too, or hand over there?
Hi, I'm Celine. I'm a senior here. So for me, I took my first ethnic studies class my freshman year, and it completely changed my life. So I'm Asian American and I'm Filipino. So growing up, I only had one teacher who happened to be an alumni here that looked like me. And it wasn't until like my freshman year where I actually had another professor that was also Filipino. And for me, that representation mattered to me so much and changed my life. Ethnic studies made me change my major. I was originally a journalism major, but then I switched to backup because, growing up I never saw myself in media. Being an Asian woman, it was just like, if we were in media, it was just, I felt we were never like represented accurately or fairly. So for me, like now I'm really driven and motivated to make sure that another girl doesn't grow up not seeing herself in media. So thank you for your hard work, because that completely changed my life and my whole career path.
I'd like to address this to Dr. Tascoe. When we spoke about the third world, in my geographic memory, in my lessons I learned, I think the people of the Muslim, Palestinian, all people are part of the third world. In fact, we included them, but the fact is, basically, you had Iranians. I remember going down to the jail down in Westport, there was a lot of Iranians down there. So most of it was Iranians. There was one dude from Kuwait, one from Saudi Arabia, and a few more. But the thing is, we talk about the third world. Now, in 2006, Dr. Abadi was recruited by the College of Ethnic Studies in Michigan. She quit a job in Michigan to come back here to put together Ahmed. So basically, it was a part of the whole process. As far as I'm concerned, at this particular time in history, we definitely need Ahmed. Right now, all under under this imperialism, you have to say, they're destroying Yemen as we look to speak right now, destroying Yemen. They destroyed Iraq, they destroyed Libya, they destroyed Afghanistan. I mean, if at any time we need Ahmed, we need him now. So basically it's the whole process. He said third world, he meant third world. That means the world, third world, people of color.
Hello. I'm a product of the student movement in the Caribbean, in Puerto Rico. I'm younger than you guys, a little bit older than them. And I'm a member of the community right here. I just want to point out a couple of things. A couple of you talk about liberation of, the third world, and anti-war, and all these things. How do you measure today that unfortunately a lot of people of the 60s have supported candidates right now that support war? Democrats like Obama was the deportation in chief. One of his first acts was to attack Libya. He supported the overthrow of the government of Manuel Zelaya in Honduras. And actually, one of the saviors of the crowd right now, Bernie Sanders, voted in favor of a resolution of the siege of Gaza in 2014, and he supported the bombing of Yugoslavia also, and supports the building of the super fighter F-35 bomber. He voted for that project. In the 60s, people like you would have never supported a war candidate or anybody that would have supported intervention like these Democratic Party candidates have. So what has happened since then? Right now we have lost that conscientiousness about being really anti-war by principle and not supporting anyone that supports military budgets or supports intervention anywhere, like Jimmy Carter has done, Obama has done, Bill Clinton actually signed into law the Immigration Reform Act, the death penalty and effective Death Penalty Act and Terrorism Act of '94. I mean, all these are Democratic Party candidates, and even people from the 60s have supported these people. So how can you, what can we do? I mean, should we support an independent movement, build an independent movement outside of the Democratic Party that is a party of war and the capitalists?
I have a very brief response. I don't think that there's anything terribly inaccurate about what you said. After the strike 50 years ago, there was a backlash. There was a repression. Student leaders were either thrown in jail or we were driven underground. And we were replaced with those who were more modest or conservative in their thinking. You've already heard to some extent that we, as veterans, were not even allowed to participate actively in the raising of the baby that we gave birth to. We didn't change a diaper. We didn't clean any poop. All we got to do was hear about it through the grapevine. And when we did have a brief moment of activity with the College of Ethnic Studies, it was muted quickly by S.I. Hayakawa, because it was clear that we were trying to bring in a curriculum and a strategy that would continue to advance the struggle that was laid foundation to during the strike. So I think what you're looking at right now is people of color coming alive. I think that even though that the College of Ethnic Studies is not perfect, there are many things that our students have learned. They have become more empowered. They may not be moving as activists in the way that we did 50 years ago, but I do believe that we have planted a seed and it's growing. And they're staying woke. They're paying attention to the world around them. And the time for them to come forward and do something is imminent. So I don't despair, and I would encourage you not to.
We don't have much time. Climate change and war.
Steve?
Yeah, I mean, look, all we have to do is look at California. We don't have to go anyplace else in the world. As I said earlier, we have the greatest wealth in the world in California, yet we have people living in poverty. These students are in RVs or homeless. That doesn't have to be. That doesn't have to be. But frankly, and I agree with the speaker, the Democratic Party supports the billionaires. California has a $21 billion surplus. $21 billion surplus. They refuse to make the billionaires pay. That means the only way it's going to change, as we changed in '68, is by organizing, by educating, and building a movement. There is no mass movement in California or in this country. We have to build a mass movement. The strike in '68 did not come out of nothing. There were organizers who came here, as we heard about today, from all over the country, from SNP, from different organizations to organize. That's part of what made the strike successful. We have to do the same thing today. There is no way of getting around organizing and educating. And the fact of the matter is, I've been involved with Ray in the struggle at Hunters Point, Bayview, the poisoning, the radiation sickness that the African American and Samoan community have there, who live in that community. And what is happening now is the Democratic politicians, Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, London Breed, Gavin Newsom, are all interested in building condos on a polluted nuclear radioactive dump site. What is going on? I mean, this is corruption. And this is what's happening in capitalism. And there's corruption everywhere, including in the federal government with Trump, and the Democrats as well. But right here in California, we have the wherewithal, we have the power, if we organize and mobilize and educate ourselves, to transform us. And we have to transform ourselves. Because working class people, working class youth cannot afford to go to the college anymore. They're being priced out. And that's by design.
Hi everybody, my name is Joy Delaluz. I'm really encouraged and inspired by the panel here and the one that I saw before, and I'm going to follow up and see if I can see the videos from the other ones that I missed. Thank you all so much.
We will get them up on YouTube.
I
We're planning
can't
to get
wait.
all the videos up so everybody can see it who weren't able to come today. A lot of people work, can't come, so we want people to see them.
I really can't wait. Thank you all so much. Clearly, your panel focuses on health, which is basically murder, identity, which is about life, and finances, which is about student loan. And all of them are interrelated in a kind of crisis that compels us to move forward and basically continue the movement that you've all begun 50 years ago. Thank you so much. I'm curious about specific strategies and tactics for how, for example, student debt. We're all sitting here, there's the food bank that just started, etc., the rising prices of books, etc. So I would love to hear you panelists, all of you who want to contribute, to give us some ideas on what we could do starting now, and what are the steps to strategies and tactics that we can follow through from now until things improve.
Okay. I have one suggestion. To the BSU, if you're here, if you go downstairs and go into the files that I brought in the office, we wrote up a program on a textbook library. And that way you call it a library so they can't deduct it from your financial aid. And we had a 99% return of all books. And that all you got to do is change the dates on the proposal, because the conditions, unfortunately, are the same. And the struggle goes on. That's just one example of currently doing an intervention to make it better for survival. Again, all of us are going to be trying our very best as we deal with a mentorship program to grad students and get you planning for advanced degrees moving forward and getting through this. This is a stepping stone. Personally, I'd like to see every last one of you get a PhD or MD so that you get involved and set policy and direction as well as your political involvement, because I should have been in Hunters Point for a 6 o'clock meeting, but I'm here because my compassion is that we desperately want the next generation to come behind us. It ain't enough for some old farts to sit up here on the stage and say, look what we did. It's about a continuation of concept and principle. And we need you to step forward in any way we can, as we decided in our meeting. We're here to help because we're a diversity of human experiences, and that we're reaching out and making sure you come behind us. Thank you.
I want to say something. You know, you students have problems. We had problems. Ours is a little different than yours. Black students came out of segregation. Do y'all know what segregation is? Do any of you? Raise your hand if you know what segregation is. Okay, we came out of segregation. We struggled. And I think the difference is the community fed us. The community fed us. In fact, I'm staying with a brother here in San Francisco. His mother fed me. I didn't have nowhere to get no food. And we made midnight runs. I'm not telling y'all to do that. But we made midnight runs to feed ourselves. The game is still on. Y'all you struggle, we struggle. Y'all are supposed to be the brighter folks. Put your minds to work. You got to take some chances. Just like you're taking a chance coming here and paying all this money to go to school. We didn't pay a lot of money, but we struggled. So, to say that, they're down. You know, all the difference is, and I go back to this again, got to have some connection to the community. The people in the community will feed you. They will help you. That's what I have to say.
And I think Bernard touched on something that's really key, is I sense today, I don't know what it is because of the mobility that students have from being in LA and then coming here and vice versa. I mean, I didn't have that. My only choice was San Francisco State. My mother didn't even want me to go to UC because she said it was too far. And I think in her wisdom, she was basically saying to me that I should be disconnected from where I grew up, which was in Chinatown. I still lived there in the beginning of my college career. But you know, those relationships that I had during that time period when I moved out of there when I was 22, those relationships are still there. And I agree with Bernard. I mean, I can't explain it. I can only feel it, and I know it because those friends that I grew up with, if anything I ever needed, something happened to me, I can always go to them. And if I don't see them for 10 years, it's like we never separated. We were able to still connect. That sense of community is something, unfortunately, is not as organic now for all of you. So you have to create it. And creating means you have to spend time and nurture it. Your friendships are not just Facebook, Instagram, social media. Those relationships take time and listening to and also caring for each other. And I think it's so much more difficult, it seems to me, for all you to do that now. And that's all I know. I'm just saying, that's all I know, but I wish you had what I had. But anyway, Steve.
You know, it's always a little easier, I think, to talk about what happened 50 years ago than to try to map out a strategy for today. And there are going to be disagreements. I mean, we had them too. Looking back, I can see plenty of mistakes that I made, that, you know, all of us who were involved in the strike made at one time or another. We didn't really completely understand what was going on. You learn by doing, right? I do want to pass one little lesson on that I think I've learned over the years. I really did not understand very well during the strike, which is that I came to understand it actually as a result of the strike, I think, which is that you need allies. They don't necessarily have to be Simon Pure. They don't necessarily have to be people you can trust. They can be tactical allies. You know, you don't turn your back on them, but if they're willing to be on the same page as you for a given objective, you take advantage of that. You don't turn your back on it because you don't like the people. You have to look for people who are fighting the same enemy that you are and make common cause with them. You don't say just, my agenda is the one that matters, and if I have time, I'll help you out too. You look for allies. I marvel at the fact sometimes that, especially today in the political climate in this country, that you had really thousands of white students who were ready to accept leadership in the BSU and TWLF, who got their heads bashed in by the cops. Some of them did some hard time. A lot of them were even very political when the strike started. And I'm thinking of two photographers for Open Process, the paper I worked for, they weren't political at all. They were film students. They were filming the police confrontations. At the end of the day, the cops dragged them behind the library and literally tortured them for 10 minutes, shoving their nightsticks between their legs and ramming them up and down. Well, the point is, why did they do it? Because it was the right thing to do. And because I think there was a consciousness at that time, because the Vietnam War was going on, that we did have kind of a global connection. We did have some kind of identification with oppressed people wherever they were. And it was just strictly a moral thing, but you don't dismiss that. So that's why I think so many of the speakers up here today have said, well, we were internationalists. When people think about what that means, it means you look for allies, you look for people who are fighting a common enemy.
I want to underscore what Steve and Peter both said and address the question about the Democratic Party being a party of sellouts. I think you have to look at it on the other side as well. The kind of so-called conservative environment that exists today, which has nothing to do with true conservatism, right? This is really radical stuff that is much closer to fascism. This didn't happen overnight. It started even before the Nixon regime, and you know how that turned out. It only took one term, one presidential term, for everything to turn around, and we got Reagan. Right? We had Carter for 4 years, and then we got Reagan, essentially for 12 years, because after Reagan, it was Bush 1. Okay. When Clinton took office, he moved the Democratic Party to the right. Okay? And people called that centrism. It wasn't centrism. Workfare is centrism. Okay? That's punishing the poor. That's doing the work that Republicans have been trying to do for the last 60 years. They want to get rid of Social Security. They want to get rid of Medicare. Okay? They do want to privatize everything. And they started that process with privatizing prisons, which continues today. Okay? They changed laws so they could actually put more people in prison for longer periods of time. And that started right here in California. The best changes that have occurred, and they've only occurred within the last 12 years, started to occur as well in California. You got to look at things on a local and on a regional basis. And in California, Republicans almost are nothing. I mean, what are they, about 32% of the legislature at this point? Okay. So there's room for criticism, at least in California, at the state and local levels. That's where you gotta work. In terms of state education, it's part of the system. It's the state that's responsible for education, all the way up to the PhD. Organization among students and among the citizens, generally, right, to fight against tuition. I mean, this was an incremental thing, tuition going up. Right? We complained about it, right, when it went from like $68 to $85 to $114. It stayed at like $114 for years. And we complained about it, but we didn't go on strike. I joked about going on strike again. I said, all power. Everybody laughed, but nobody did anything. Okay? When Proposition 13 hit, we knew that they were going to jack up tuition. We knew what it was going to do to public education. Remember when 20% of the local faculty in K through 12 were laid off? Yes. Within 3 years, right, we lost about 20 to 23% of the youngest newly trained faculty.
Yeah, because of seniority, right?
Exactly. So this started a long time ago. And it's been very effective. So in order to fight it, you have to tell the truth. You have to organize. You have to organize very carefully. And like Peter said, I'm backing up Steve on this, but like Peter said, you got to look for allies. That was actually one of my original points, is that we wouldn't exist without allies. We had allies in the administration, we had allies among other faculty, we even had allies, okay, from people who were critical of the strike. But they were community leaders that believed in the mission of third worldism, the mission of ethnic studies, and they supported us after the strike. Okay. That's what you need now. And the best alliances are among your own, among students first. Okay. When I said, remember, we were your age when we did what we did. It was possible because we had alliances across the board. Okay. Berkeley didn't happen by itself. We knew each other. People from City College came out and supported the strike. People from San Jose State came out and supported the strike. People from it's called Cal East Bay now, but it was Hayward to us, came out and supported the strike. Fresno, all over the state. All of that happened. That's why ethnic studies started happening on a national level. Because there were alliances. You gotta build that.
Laureen, I had my hand up for a bit. I know that I spoke a lot today, but this is the problem of the talking. This is the problem because I'm actually the only faculty member who actually speaks for about 2 billion Muslims, 300 million Arabs, 11.5 million Palestinians. This is the problem. And I actually sit down and I think, do I want to speak up, stand up and speak? Do I want to hold my tongue? Because I want to engage in the conversation. But I also heard something that's very troubling, and I'm actually speaking to you, Dr. Tascoe, Ramona, because we go way back. We've met in 2008, and you actually came to our curriculum discussion, you and Damira, God bless her soul. Remember when we had Dr. Mirvat Hakim, who came from Howard University, and she was a professor of Africano Studies, and she came to speak and so on. So actually, I'm really troubled. And I'm going to be as honest with you as you were with me. I'm very, very troubled. Because A, I don't think justice is divisible. I think we cannot say either blacks, I heard you. I'm going to, okay.
I'm not understanding.
Okay.
I'm hearing
First.
The mic is too
Oh.
Mic too close.
Is this okay? Yeah, well, I'm actually, I'm very saddened by the statement you made, on a personal level. Part of the reason is that I do not think that we should ever pit one struggle against the other. Never, ever. Historically, as Palestinians and Palestinian scholars and advocates, we always resisted. We resisted trying to actually set up the struggle against anti-Semitism with the struggle against Islamophobia, white supremacy, racism on an unequal soil. That's one. Secondly, I did not speak about black studies. I actually love black studies and Africana and so on. I'm always supportive, even when people don't agree with each other. So I wasn't speaking about that. I was speaking about 50 years after the strike and 50 years after the College of Ethnic Studies. We can no longer just pat ourselves on the back and be happy with what happened, but to actually expect more, which I think this is the goal of everybody who spoke here today. So I'm not the only one who's saying it. But it really troubles me to say that this was ill-timed to talk about Arab and Muslim studies. It is never ill-timed. Whether you're talking about third worldism...
May I ask you
why
I said that?
Let me finish. Because actually I've heard it before, and it's really, and I want to ask you, I want to ask everybody, I want to ask the strikers, I want to ask the College of Ethnic Studies, I want to ask everybody who believes in justice at San Francisco State, if people do not believe that it is time, which I don't know when the time is, because this is the same question we could have asked during segregation, or during the kidnapping, or during genocide. When is the time? When is the time that it's supposed to be? I think it's always the time.
Okay.
And also historically, even people who were kidnapped from Africa and enslaved and brought here, many people actually were Muslims, which is part of the history is not known. Part of the people who participated in the 68th strike, it's also not known. These are some of the things that we believe we contribute to it. I don't believe that it is not time. But if people hear the strikers, if people in the College of Ethnic Studies, if people here actually support that it is not time, I want to know when is the time. And if not the time, maybe we just need to pack up our bags and go set up the program elsewhere. I mean, really,
Wait, hold on a second.
very
You said you said you wanted to direct a question to me because of something I said. Oh, you're not,
Okay,
there's no
I'm
question.
the moderator, ladies.
Shh. I think it's only fair, it would only be fair for you to ask me to clarify, because there was something that I said that you were offended by. May I clarify? Thank you. When I said it was ill-timed, you were not aware of the internal struggle between the BSU veterans, the veterans of the strike, and our sense of being alienated from the College of Ethnic Studies. One of the most critical demands that we had won but had never been instituted was the establishment of a community advisory committee. As a result, many years went by, 20, 30 years, where we were not engaged in the strategic planning of what the College of Ethnic Studies was doing. And yet, we still were hungering to be active. So we didn't know how advanced they were, how unadvanced they might be, but we did know that we were not included. Next thing we heard was that Arab and Muslim studies was now being incorporated, and sometime thereafter, we heard that LGBT was being added, and it wasn't that we were against Arab and Muslim, nor was it that we were against LGBT, but as a community, we had been excluded from the process of evaluating our progress based upon our ideology for even establishing a school of Black studies that subsequently became a College of Ethnic Studies, School of Third World Liberation Studies. There was no accountability to the community that had struggled and fought and suffered. And I don't know if you could even imagine what that was like for us to be leaders so courageous that we would put our lives and our careers on the line for something this important. And it's now taken and run with by people who don't think like we think. We don't know where they came from. We know ourselves that we are innovating curriculum and pedagogy. Well, we're not even included in that. So the whole question of whether or not we were ready, the community, how did this happen? Why are we bringing them in now? We haven't even addressed the issue of our concerns as a community. We haven't fixed ourselves. If we're fixed, we don't feel it because we're not involved. That's the context of that remark. And even to this day, we are still not involved because the College of Ethnic Studies leadership, the Provost's office, the Academic Senate, the President's office, they have not sought to correct that problem, to bring us into the loop, because if they did, I guarantee you, we as a group would weigh heavily in on all of the issues, including Arab and Muslim studies. We're on the outside looking in, and we're being held accountable for something that we had nothing to do with. Thank you for listening.
I'd like to say something. I'm real concerned about Africana studies. That's my first situation. Ethnic studies is second or third because those are the other groups. But my first concern is about what's going on with Africana studies, because they have shunned us and disrespected us over the last 50 years. How many people has been, there's only Dorothy Cerruta, about 10 years ago, had us out and we done a 3-day seminar. Christine Harris had us out and I spoke at a black graduation, or a third, what was a black graduation. We just haven't been included in black studies. Now, if we ain't been included in black studies, how we gonna get to ethnic studies? Seriously. On the real, how we gonna get to ethnic studies? What haven't even been included in black studies? They've drop kicked us out, and all of those people, all of those professors have made a career and a paycheck off of us. All the people out there went to jail. All of us suffered. We all suffered. And we got kicked to the curb. That's the truth.
And the faculty that is here benefited from our sacrifice. And they've established a pathway of careerism at our expense. That is how we perceive it. We would love to have been actively involved, would still be willing to be actively involved in the most constructive way possible to the benefit of those who have seen the benefit of the pedagogy and the style of learning that has come uniquely through the College of Ethnic Studies, because that's what we fought for, the innovation of self-determination.
Crutch has a right to speak. Crutch has a right to speak. He spent a year and a half in jail. He got it right.
This is addressed to students here and to the panel. I'm very distressed because I think that there's been some misunderstanding about what we were fighting for and what we were standing for. Palestine, Israel, is in Northeast Africa. If you look at the various different plates, you see that it is in Northeast Africa. When I was a student here, when I went to prison, I didn't go to jail. I went to Vacaville behind this. Okay? My life has been changed completely because of San Francisco State. I'm saying that to say that when we talked about third world studies, that we didn't include Palestine and the conflict with the Zionist Israel state. That is not correct. We did. And to say then that it was unfortunate for them to raise their voices at various times or another, I think that's really unfortunate because it's not true. Now, there may have been some of us, and we're talking about truth here. There may have been some of us who did not think that the Samoans or the Hawaiians or people from the Aborigines of Australia were not included, but we did, because they were people of color, they were third world people, they were people who were not represented by the Soviet Union, they weren't supported by the Western powers. That was the definition of the third world people. Okay? So I don't want to get into a back and forth on this, but I just want to say that I'm talking about the Black Student Union and the Third World Liberation Front. We fought for people of color, we fought for third world people, and part of that was the Palestinian people, and I would die for that. Thank you.
I can see a mass exodus of students now. So let me just say this. Dialogue has to be always part of this whole process of organizing and becoming better. And I firmly support, and I hope students will too if this comes up, is that we do establish a community advisory board of which, or committee of which was supposed to be a strike demand and it never did happen. And I think that given that, you know, that whole need of having that, to invite some of us who may be very critical, but at the same time we do have wisdom and we do want the college to survive. And hopefully, because we have some life experiences and all of us have work that has to do with organizing and making people's lives better, bring us back to the table. Because the college obviously is not in trouble in terms of finances necessarily, but it is, I'm giving a warning thing, is that it is that we are not all understanding each other's, quote, pain and issues, much less working together to help each other do it. And hopefully, as a group of community people, we can bring something back so that the college can move forward, especially now with the med issue that's been brewing for years, and then also with Africana studies. And I'm sure Asian American and Latino has their own issues. So it's never stagnant, it's always growing, and it's never easy. And that is what struggle and commitment is about. Never giving up on the not easy, and always being together to make it better. So thank you, it has been a fabulous day.
Can we please have one more comment, please? I've been here all day, and I think everything that you've said today is about inclusion. It's about third world studies, which means about our interconnectedness between all our departments, all our programs. And I think one of the things, you know, I hope at the end of the night as we're leaving, we don't carve ourselves out as third world peoples from LGBT peoples or Arab Muslim peoples, because Arab Muslim people and LGBT people have always been a part of those third world movements, and we have always been a part of the movement. Bayard Rustin was a leader of the civil rights movement. He was an architect of the civil rights movement. He was an architect in the 1940s. He led the way for African Americans to be able, for your generation, to have that strike. So, and that is part of that history. And so it's not something that's separate. In fact, LGBT are African, you know, are black students. So I think we need to be more inclusive as opposed to narrowing our perspective to be less. And I think that's the kind of coalition we need to build. That's the kind of third world coalition, because LGBT people are also third world. We are also struggling as Arab Muslims, and we are also part of those third world. I'm a little younger than you. I fought in that generation, in the next generation for you as a civil rights, you know, in programs at UC Santa Cruz. But, you know, there were many of us that were gay and lesbian and women of color, Barbara Christian, all of these people that were in fact fundamentally doing theory, okay, while doing community work. While doing, the community work was the theory. It was what was bringing us out, okay? And it was those, where we were seeing ourselves multiply marginalized in multiple ways, that we saw our affinities across communities. So I want to sort of leave